Hello and welcome everyone to the inaugural episode of the Knife Nuts podcast, the show that delves deep to bring you the best and worst the knife community has to offer. My name is Levon, and joining me on this frankly silly voyage are two men with absolutely nothing better to do than talk about knives. Introduce yourselves, boys.
Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Dave. You may know me as Misanthropia.
And I'm Jake, more likely known as Whiskey Pickle Jake on Instagram.
Wow, so much for keeping the taglines, the usernames to the end of the podcast. Well, we'll just move on. So in addition to these two, for the first episode, we're excited to have a very special guest. He was named Best New Maker at the USN Show and Blade Show in 2014 and took home Best Tactical Folder at the Blade Show in 2014 and 2015. God, I'm sure RJ Martin was pissed about that. Please welcome Mr. Sharp Eye Design himself, Brian Nadeau. Brian, you're supposed to talk now.
Oh, is it my turn now?
Jesus Christ.
I think it's safe to say no one was expecting this much format.
It wasn't really format. It was more of an intro. Brian, just say hi.
Hello. How is everybody doing?
It's funny because you just did a New Jersey accent on top of your New Jersey accent.
Is that possible?
I didn't know.
It just happened.
It was New Jersey Inception that just went down. Well, I promise everyone this is actually a show about knives, and we're going to be talking about them in depth. I mean, it may not be your average show because we don't take ourselves very seriously, but let's see what happens. Hopefully you haven't stopped listening already. Dave, what's the format look like?
All right, so we have some hopefully interesting segments trying to change up the whole knife podcasting thing. So we'll have some basic segments like what we carry today, but we're also going to have a little news section where each of us will come up with an interesting story, or if we just have one big story, we'll just talk about that. But we're also going to have some interesting sponsors that we've recruited for us to support us financially, and we're hoping that we'll get some pretty good guests. So I'm looking forward to it.
Aren't we all? So, Brian, this is your first time on a podcast, am I right?
Correct.
You've been interviewed by other people before, but most of those places, most of those interviewers kind of sucked. So is this your first time actually being on a show where you're happy to be here?
Did I say I was happy to be here?
I just assumed.
We'll see how it goes, and I'll let you know if I'm happy to be here or not.
Sounds good. So first on our list is, what did anybody get anything new? Anybody get anything new recently, knife-wise?
Yeah, I actually, what's my most recent one? It is the We Knives 703. It's one of their new budget models. It's like a 3.75-inch blades, D2, contour G10 handles, stainless steel liner lock. It's actually really impressive for $100. I like it so far. But
where's that made?
You know where it's made. It's made in China.
Under $100?
It is $100 exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. I will say that the communist pride screws are actually really annoying. So, like, at one point, have you ever seen them? They're like a star, but the star's upraised. Yeah. Anyway, so they're really, really sharp, and one of them isn't countersunk enough into the handle, so it is like stabbing yourself in the hand every time you grab it in a certain way. So, other than that, it's pretty good.
That's just what you want with a knife, is one that actually stabs you back.
Yeah, it's an active user experience.
Do they include the little bit to adjust those?
Yeah, so they include the bit, but the problem is that the bit is like this little tiny keychain thing that doesn't fit into a larger driver, so you can't really get a lot of torque on it. It's not the best system, but I haven't had to disassemble any of them yet, and I have three Wii knives so far. But
crazy. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm pretty impressed with what they're doing, so I like them.
That's good to hear. Jake, did you get anything interesting?
Well, my most recent endeavor was 2 PTs at the same time, as you well know.
That's true.
Wait, what's the second one?
They were just 2 identical big belly MSC PTs from that last run with the you know,
Were they?
I don't know what else to call it. Big belly blade.
Were they the slip joint versions, aka the fucking frame lock that he just didn't bend the frame lock?
Exactly. Yeah. No, these were the frame locks with the pre-cut section.
Yeah,
With the functioning frame lock.
that shit is so absurd. I thought it was an actual slip joint. It's just a fucking frame lock that he didn't bend the lock bar over.
Yeah, it just has an extra detent hole in the open position. That's about it.
Really?
Yep.
And that's a slip joint.
Wow.
What an innovation.
It works. And I have close contact with at least one European who, well, one or two really, who don't quite follow the no locking blade, law. I guess it's a law. It's not really a cultural policy or anything like that. But they just carry whatever they want. It seems.
Yeah, I don't really get that. It's weird. Brian, when are you going to give us a non-locking Typhoon where you just skip the step where you bend the lock bar over?
I wouldn't hold my breath for that one.
All right.
It would be especially interesting because the blade just goes, conceals directly in the handle. So I guess you'd have to shake it open.
Yeah, you do the fucking Hinderer tactical wrist flick.
Yeah. I actually got a new production knife.
Ooh.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
This might be the first knife purchase that you didn't warn me about first.
Yeah, it was definitely
other than gifts. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely an impulse, but I purchased the Zero Tolerance 0460. It's that shrunken down Sinkovich. How do you say that? Polcheki?
Polychotki, I think.
Polychotki, yeah. A nice little knife, I've got to say. It's $180. It's got that carbon fiber with a bronze weave in it. It's kind of neat. Ergos work. You were asking me, Dave, about how the ergos work on such a curvy knife, but it's kind of got that like upswept Persian type look, or like a John Gray perversion profile, and it works really well. I've been pretty pleased with it. And on top of that, I finally got my Sharp by Design Mini Typhoon, and it's probably in my top 5 knives that I've ever carried. So I love that thing.
That's
he was
awesome.
giddy.
Brian, I know you're not one to carry many knives, but what's been going on with you?
Carrying wise?
Sure, or knives in general,
No, I'm just making them and getting them out, man. I'm busting ass every day, just trying to fulfill the orders. And now I'm panicking because Blade is coming up, and I'm saying, crap, it's 8 weeks away, and I still have all these orders that I got to get done. At the same time, I got to get a bunch of stuff for Blade to make it worthwhile, and not just showing up there for a trip.
I can't believe Blade's only 8 weeks away. How did that happen?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Is that where we're going to see all of the Damascus bladed and strange milling and? Hey, I'm going off of what's available on the website that I haven't seen in person.
No, you're probably not going to see too much of that stuff. The bulk of what I'm going to bring is probably the simpler stuff. Might do a few 3D ones. And then I have, something special that I'm going to bring that I haven't even really talked about too much yet. It's those are going to be very limited. I'm going to make a handful of them a year. And I'm going to debut them at Blade, so that's going to be pretty exciting.
That's pretty cool. And all new design?
Yes. Yep.
That's pretty
Very cool.
I'm acting like I haven't seen it already. But
Okay. For those of us that haven't, Levon.
yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it. I'm a Sharp by Design collector, to say the least. So I'm pretty excited about it.
I just wanted to say one thing, not to get too far into the topic, but speaking of orders, Brian, when I went on your website and you had the thing telling your customers not to order the stupid fucking color combinations, you immediately became my hero. I couldn't believe you did that.
It's awkward, I mean, some of these guys want some weird stuff. Like the guy, the color he picked was an orange, but there's no real orange in the spectrum.
Yeah.
And, over blasting, the orange it's more like a peach. So over the blast, after it was blasted, and then it was blasted, vibrated, and then anodized. It was like flesh tone. It was just horrible,
Yeah,
flesh-colored chevron pattern.
Yeah, it was tough. So what people got to remember, everybody wants something different, so they try to pick something that's a little wild, and I think in the end you're going to be disappointed. They're harder to keep clean. And when you go to sell it, which most people do at some point, you don't want to be, have 3 people interested in it. You want to have, if you pick something out, you want to get something that you're going to have a biggest pool of people to pick from. It's
Yep.
I bought a secondhand Sharp by Design knife about a year ago, where the seller, it was the same exact story. He thought it might be cool when he was ordering it, and then he got it and was like, there were so many better things I could have chosen. Why did I do that? But obviously it still looked great and functioned well, but just as far as all those options, he was overwhelmed.
Can we also point out that, like, if you are buying a $500 knife, how do you not know that orange isn't one of the colors in the anodizing spectrum?
Well, when you look at it, it looks a little orange. It's very light, and they don't realize that once. And and I'd like to explain this to everybody. This is a chance for me to. It's hard to explain the little quirks of each color and what happens with it. Like in the high voltage colors, it on one surface will reflect pink, and on the other surface will reflect blue, and that depends on your surface finish. And so things can get a little weird. Now, I can't go to each person that picks out these whacked out colors and say, this is what's going to happen. It just takes too much time.
Yeah.
Already just to take the orders, I was open for a week and took a week's worth of orders.
And he's gone. And welcome back, Brian. I think we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but looks like you're back now.
All right. Do we want to transition to our big news story now? Stop.
Yeah, we want to spend a lot of time talking to Brian about his current crop of custom knives and the mini Typhoon, but we want to dedicate a large amount of time to that. So we want to move on to a little bit of knife news. And the biggest thing going on, Dave, why don't you tell us?
All right, so on March 31st, suspiciously a day before April Fool's Day, one Mickey Ray Berger, aka Mick Strider, announced on his Instagram in a rather cryptic post that Strider Knives was closing. So this is kind of...
Hold on. Is that his real name?
Yeah, his real name's Mickey Ray Berger.
Mickey Ray Berger.
I never knew that.
You think he had a cool name like Mick Strider?
One would have only hoped.
Yeah, no. So this is, I think, is kind of a case, and we've talked about this a little bit, but where there is a lot of smoke but very little fire, because immediately everyone went fucking nuts, because when does a successful company just announce they're closing out of nowhere? But it just looks like their Strider production knives are going to be continued to be made under the MSC label, and everyone already knows that Dwayne, if you're out here on the forums like I am, you already know that Dwayne and Mick have had a sort of falling apart, or they've sort of distanced themselves from each other for years now.
How can macaroni and cheese distance themselves from each other?
Yeah. Mick was talking real spicy on their subforum about Dwayne, because somebody posted like, "Hey, my Dwayne Dwyer custom has been with Dwayne for 6 months. I can't get in touch with him." Mick was like, "Yeah, that sucks. That's bullshit." Openly talking about his business partner. So he was like, "Yeah, we don't have anything to do with each other anymore." So this is really nothing.
Yeah. So what's the story? Like, the next day they came clean and were like, nothing's really going anywhere. We're just rebranding.
Well, they were just acting like, first off, their response was really bizarre to me, because like you have a bunch of concerned fans and are acting like it's so fucking bewildering that people are worried that Strider is just going away. But they're like, yeah, we're going to keep making the knives. They're just not going to be under the Strider Knives Incorporated brand. Like, it's
so does that weird. So does that mean people are now selling their like Gunner Grip SMFs and S30V for like $2,000?
Yeah, you better believe your ass that this like Ghost Stripe American flag SNG I have is going up for sale soon.
Oh, American flag SNG. Oh.
Yeah, no, it's got the very rare, slightly deeper top swedge than the current production ones. Wow.
Interesting. So Strider Knives is going away, but it's also staying exactly the same.
Correct. Basically, nothing seems to be changing.
I think it gets them out of a legal or business partnership officially, so that they can move on, do whatever it is they want to do without any legal connections.
Yeah,
business connections, whatever.
taxes.
The thing that I find interesting is that they're apparently moving out of their current facility in San Marcos, though. I mean, this is apocryphal, but somebody on the forums said that, like, they talked to Josh or something, and they live in San Marcos, and they are moving to some other facility. So, I don't know. We'll see. I don't think it's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm already over it.
Yeah.
Likewise.
The other thing, I don't know if you guys have any other information on this, but another thing that happened in the past week is Jens Anzo actually is starting his own company now. Well, his own production knife company. Is that what's happening?
No, it's worse than that. It is okay. So I'll consider myself a bit of a hipster, but he started this company called Ansu of Denmark, and it is going to curate collections of like EDC gear. And the key term here is curate, which is how you know it's bullshit. So basically, he's just going to take fancy, expensive stuff and resell it to you with a fancy website and fancy packaging.
Isn't that what he already does?
Yes.
Isn't that what the giant mouse line is, basically?
Yes. Hey, you want this fox knife? You want to pay an extra $130 for it so that you can have a pirate mouse on the fucking blade?
No.
Congratulations.
I don't know. Who knows? Maybe those giant mouse knives are nice. I've never handled one.
They're from what I've heard, they're pretty decent. But like, I mean, Fox makes the Olamic Wayfarer 247, so like, I trust them. Although my Fortis is pretty crappy.
You know, we have a maker here that manufactures all his knives in China, right here on our...
That is very true. I've seen them on AliExpress and DHgate.
What a douche you are.
Brian, when did you have that collaboration?
What a douche you are.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I said, when did that collaboration start? I see your knives all over AliExpress.
Yeah, it's, what are you going to do? That's how you know you made it.
Yeah?
I think I might have been the first to spot one of those clones on eBay and promptly text the group, very excited that he had made it in the cloning sense. It's the greatest flattery in the world, right, to be copied. So
no, it really isn't. It's not from the Chinese, you know. It's when somebody takes an idea of yours and goes further with it or does something with it, that's great. But when the Chinese just blatantly put my name on it, even, and you know, it's like, come on.
Brian, we know you're out there collaborating with them. You're a communist sympathizer. We all know it.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the droves of employees he has working for him in his you know,
in my basement
shop. Yeah, your basement. But that's a great transition, Brian. I think now's your time to like clear the record about what Sharp by Design is, and that it's you.
Just
talk a little bit. Talk a little bit about what brought you to the world of knives.
It was kind of a weird situation. It's, you know, I was working for a company designing and building prototype equipment and stuff like that. And while I was doing that, I was always designing stuff for myself. You know, I designed a suspension for an ATV. I designed a big game fly reel with a new type of drag system. And I started getting to all this stuff, and it always would get to the patent issues. And I was never in a position in my life to, you know, drop that kind of money on a patent, not knowing if I'm going to be able to take the rest of it further, and was just too busy to really ever dedicate that much time to that stuff. I mean, when I say that, you know, I did have ridiculous amounts of time in the design end of it because I really enjoy that part. But, you know, I couldn't really go anywhere with any of that stuff. Not that I couldn't. Again, I didn't have the balls to go anywhere with that stuff. So in the meantime, my wife met one of our neighbors, lives down the street. She went to his Halloween party, and he hand forges knives. And she came back the next day or that night and told me, "Oh, wait until you see what this guy down the street does. He makes knives by hand." So a couple months later, I ended up meeting him, and I went down and checked out what he does. And that night, I was like, "Oh, well, I have a CNC equipment at work I can use. So let me show you what I can make with a machine." And that's how it started. You know, I made my first couple knives. I had kept one. I gave one to him because he kind of introduced me to it. He uses it for digging when he metal detects, which is kind of aggravating, but you know.
He definitely uses it as a shovel. We're talking about Bill here, I would assume.
Right.
And he has the most beat up, and Brian made these really cool looking fixed blades, and the dude has one of Brian's like original designs, and he's been digging in the sand with it for many, many years. And it's just sort of like dulled at the tip. It looks like it's just like polished in the front of it. It's the funniest looking thing you've ever seen.
You know, now that wouldn't bother me so much, but it's like it was my first 2 knives. You know, had a little sentimental value to them there. And when I gave it to him, he comes back 2 days later. Oh, it works great. I dig with it. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Which is a far cry. It's a far cry from what he says now. Whenever I take delivery of a new knife from Brian, he's like, "Oh, you can throw it in a lake for all I care."
No, it doesn't matter. I've made enough where that's gone for most of them. I mean, there are ones that when I that really stupid stuff that when I say stupid stuff, just that stupid time suckers that I do of like that some of those 3D patterns. I can spend a whole day of programming, a whole day of machining, waste 3 sets of frames to finally get it where I want it, and I do that because I enjoy that part of it. I don't I don't do it because I can make money on it, that's for sure.
I actually have a question, Brian. So backing up even before that, so I mean, forgive my ignorance, but do you go to school to learn this stuff, or did you apprentice with someone? How did you learn all of these incredible machining skills that you have?
Most of it was self-taught. I started off my career as a printing press mechanic. I worked for a printing company who had all sheet-fed press webs, sheet-fed presses, webs, all the binder equipment to make books and that kind of crap. And I worked there and was a maintenance. When I say maintenance guy, it wasn't building maintenance. It was machine maintenance, replacing cylinders, fixing the machines, electrical troubleshooting, all that end. PLCs and the works. So that's where I learned a lot of my stuff. And then I ended up getting a job at a company where I can kind of just deal with the design. I got to, come up with concepts and build the prototypes, and had machinery at my disposal to use to build kind of whatever I had to do to get to it, And it's the only thing that I would ever say that would be better is working for like an IndyCar team or something, where money's not the issue. Make that thing faster. That's that would be the only job I can get that I would probably think was better than what I was doing.
Oh, very cool.
Wow. So you now have talk a little bit about your shop now, where it's located, and explain to people what this operation actually looks like today.
Oh, it's pathetic when you look at it. It's funny when people come and they see it for the first time. They're like, "What? You make those knives out of here?" It's I live in northern New Jersey in a small house, and my garage is underneath my living room, and it's a real low garage to begin with, so it's only 1 car wide, maybe 25 feet long, and that's where I have my machinery and everything that I use. I'd like to have more, but I just can't fit it here yet, and I'm kind of debating. It's tough to make the next move to go to something bigger, worrying about rent, and the market just seems so crazy, and I still can't. Part of it is I still can't believe that I'm doing it for my 4th year already. So it's kind of like I don't know. I gotta move to something bigger, but I think I'm going to get a property. Sell this house, go to another state, get some property, and put steel prefab building down or something, and get a decent shop going. But
this is your full-time gig.
Yeah, this is what I do. It's I do it day and night, 7 days a week, probably 360 days a year. Christmas morning I'm down here, unfortunately. But it's not easy to make a living making knives out of your house. It's you got to work at it.
It's pretty amazing, and the thing that I find fascinating is you came out with this design, the Typhoon, which I guess was your second folder design. But it's the one that people really got to see, I think.
Right. Well, the first design, I was still working at that company that I was doing, the R&D stuff with, and I made that first folder. I only made 3 of them, and then I got involved in some other stuff, and I really couldn't use that company's equipment to really run a business selling knives there. So, I kind of just backed off, and then I didn't make a knife for like another year and a half or 2 years. And
Gotcha.
and then when I got laid off, I came here.
Just to be clear, is that first knife the Viper, the one that's on your website?
Correct.
Okay. So you guys can see that on Brian's website.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool knife. I mean, there's some interesting things about it. You can see the DNA of throughout the newer models and things, but a lot of the innovation that you brought to the table, like your lock bar insert, a lot of people don't realize that your knives don't use a traditional D10.
Yeah, so a lot of people, it's kind of a flavor that you got to get a hold of. It's not everybody's going to like it at first. They're used to this quick, ultra crisp break of D10. Mine's not really like that, but I think it has some advantages. One, it's stronger for sure. Just mechanically, it's stronger. You can't drill a hole at the edge of something and push something in it that's bigger than it and not deform metal and fatigue it. And I did a lot of testing in the beginning when I first did that night, when I first did the Viper, and that's what made me come up with that idea of getting rid of the ball and machining it in. The problem is it's not cheap to do that. It's you're throwing away a lot of material to just leave that tiny little nub sticking up.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it has some advantages, and it's worked out pretty good so far. People seem to like it.
It's carried over to every design: the Typhoon, the Cyclone, the Hurricane, and now the Mini Typhoon. Do you see yourself sticking with that as kind of a trademark?
I think for the most of them, there are other things I'd like to try, and that's kind of why I am doing what I'm doing now. For a while there, I was just making a lot of really fancy stuff, but I got so caught up in making that same fancy stuff that I couldn't really change things up. So what I'm doing now is making a simpler, not a simpler design. The design's the same as the, $1,500 versions of these. It's just, I'm not doing the 3D work and allowing people to give me any combination possible. I'd like to do that. It's just too much time. So to kind of simplify it, I'm letting them do a certain amount of options. I'm going to keep these in a lower price range. I can get these out a lot faster than I can some of that 3D work. And it'll allow me to do the things that I wouldn't be able to do on a production. I can't say production because it's not a production knife, but on something that I'm making quite a bit of.
I mean, that's a great point too, because I couldn't believe when you announced the price point of this Mini Typhoon. You have it starting at $450.
Yep, it's part of that was by starting and saying every knife the way it is, with no options, everything is blasted and vibrated, so it allows me not to have to change end mills that often, and it lets me get away with surface finishes that I couldn't really have on some of that other stuff.
But you have a CNC, so you're just printing these knives out anyway, right?
Oh, they're popping out 3 at a time right now. You don't hear it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they come out the Easy Bake Oven.
But that's a great point too. It's like how much. I mean, Dave, I know you'd probably be interested in this too, and Jake. How much handwork is actually going into each one of these knives?
Well, it depends on each one, but there's always a lot of handwork that's involved in them. There's nothing comes off the machine finished. It's some of the higher end stuff. Even I would like to have done more handwork to them, because when I'm doing a lot of different colors and stuff like that onto a knife, I can't necessarily go back and soften edges and things like that to make them feel a little smoother, because I'd be taking off, anodizing colors and stuff like that. So I don't do, on the higher end frames, I don't do a lot of handwork, but it's still, it's not like I put the piece of titanium in the machine and hit go and all of a sudden they start popping out in the colors that I want. It's like such a fiasco to do that stuff. For every color, I got to take it in and out of the machine. I got to, so I do the first machining process. I go, I clean it. I take it out of the machine. I go, I clean it. I etch it. I anodize it. then it goes back in the machine, then I have to machine the next process, then it comes out of the machine, that same thing over, cleaning it, etching it, or it depends on the etch. Sometimes you can't etch in between. Sometimes you have no choice. It depends on what you're looking to do. But, so just the anodizing process is, a fiasco trying to get back and forth with. That's kind of why I try to limit things this time and didn't allow multiple colors in a frame, and it just turns out to be too much scheduling and thinking about everything to get it done. I couldn't do that anymore. Did I answer your question? I don't even know what your question was.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you did.
Brian, I had a question actually, if we can interject here.
Right.
So I'm a big production knife guy, and one thing in production knives is that whenever you get a 3D machined, a contoured scale, companies will always talk about how expensive it was and how difficult it was for them to do it. So obviously you know a lot about this. Is it that much more difficult to make a scale a 3D contour versus a flat scale?
It's not necessarily more difficult to program. I can actually if you were just going to say, machine this surface or this shape of a scale, you drew it all 3D first and said machine this, I can actually program that faster than I can something with a lot of detail on the frame, or like even a flat frame but with a lot of details and chamfers and stuff, where it's just a machine time. Titanium, you can't rip through titanium like you can aluminum. It's tough stuff. So, and you're talking about thin pieces, so they're always held weird. There's a long span a lot of times in between pieces, so you get vibration and flex, and it's really weird stuff to machine. So it's just literally from a flat frame that might take me 25 minutes to do the outside. When I say the outside, I'm talking the outside surfaces. The inside is a different program. That might take me 25 minutes. Compared to a 3D frame that could depending on how much of how fine you wanted it, could take 3 hours.
Wow.
Oh my God. If you wanted it machined smooth, to where you almost don't see marks, that could take a long time because you're stepping over such a little amount.
All right, well, I guess I believe Spyderco now when they talk about how difficult it was to do the Sleesh Bowie, or how time-consuming. So, thanks.
Yeah, you look at if you look at some of that Escher pattern frames that I've made, some of them have taken 8 hours to machine.
Yeah, those are fucking nuts. Those are incredible.
I love doing that stuff. I just don't for what it takes to get it done. I can't do that stuff anymore, unfortunately. But I love it. I love to do it.
I don't blame you.
It's crazy. But moving forward, you hit the scene with the Typhoon, and everybody went nuts. I know it was my first custom knife, and it got all of this attention. You took it was that the first knife you took to some shows? Yeah,
I always call Blade my first show. I did actually go to a show right before Blade. It was a local guy had a show in a firehouse. And that's where I first met. No, I'm not even going to talk about him.
Do it.
So I did go to a show. Like 10 people showed up to it, so it wasn't really a show like that. But the first debut of that really was Blade. But the funny thing is I started taking orders in I think it was February of 2014. Mm-hmm. And I stopped taking orders well before Blade, and I didn't take an order at Blade for them or for another, I think it was 8 or 10 months.
That was very smart of you, because so many new makers fall into that quagmire of taking way too many orders and then fucking it up and disappearing.
Yeah, I don't. Most of the time I try to keep it at 6 months worth of orders. I typically do I say one run. And that'll be enough to get me 6 months of, to get them done. And most people know I don't screw around when it comes to getting them done. I bust my ass to get them out there.
It's true.
So it's typically most people haven't waited more than 6 months.
So those awards that you started to get, did they come as a surprise to you? Did you even know that those awards existed?
Well, it's funny because that buddy that got me into knife making, Bill, Bill Barrett. He came down to Blade with me for the first time. So this is my first time down there. You know, I'm obviously just blown away by everything that's going on. And then, you know, it's awkward as somebody new who doesn't know shit or shinola about anything, any of this industry yet, to show up at your table, setting up the day before and having literally 25 dealers come mob you. And, you know, literally money getting thrown at you and knives disappear. I didn't even know what the hell was going on at one point. So it's like, wait, everybody just chill out, you know, because I didn't know who was holding what, who walked away with what money was there. I wasn't worried about somebody really screwing me over as much as just trying to keep track of it all, you know. And then, I don't know, where was I going with that?
Awards.
Oh, the awards. Then, Bill, thank you. You got to keep me on track once in a while. I'll tell you that right now. So I have the knives that I want to enter for the awards, and you have to be at a certain room at a certain time, and you have to go put the knife down on the table that is, you know, the category that you're going in. So my buddy Bill, he's running around grabbing swag off everybody's tables. He comes back with 50 pounds of, you know, hats and shirts and all sorts of stickers and all sorts of crap. So he's out there running around getting this stuff. He's supposed to be back at my table at a certain time so I can go over there. He's not back. I'm like, I'm calling him on the phone. I'm like have people looking for him. He finally comes back. It's like 15 minutes after the time you're supposed to be there. I'm like, shit. So I go running across the hotel. I get to the room. Everybody's piling out of the room. I'm like, what happened? They're like, it's over. I'm like, son of a bitch. I call my wife on the phone. I'm like, I'm going back and punching Bill in the face. You know, I'm like, I'm flipping out because part of what I wanted to do was enter this, you know, and while I'm on the phone with my wife calming me down.
Police are coming.
I see one of the judges walk into the room, and I'm like, what's going on? Who won it? And he said, oh, no, we didn't do it yet. I'm like, oh, so I didn't miss it. But, you know, I almost went back at that point, so I would have missed it if I went back. So, long story short, I go to the first table. It was new maker, and I saw a bunch of different guys. I saw Chavez's knives down there. I saw, there was a bunch of different people. Then I was like, oh, shit, there's no way I'm going to get this, you know? So, but I put the knife down anyway, and then I put one on Tactical Folder, too, and RJ Martin had his knife with the pivotless pivot or whatever he calls it.
Right. The non-innovation innovation.
Yeah, whatever it is. I don't know.
Man, he must have been pissed. Anyway.
Yeah, so then I left. I went back to my table, and like 2 hours later, the one of the judges came walking up to my table and said, you got both of them. I was like, no way. So I was just like in a daze for a while trying to get my act together.
Holy shit. So then history repeated itself the next year when you took home Best Tactical Folder for a second year in a row.
Yes. Yeah. But before I even went there, I went to Vegas. So Vegas was my second show. The USN show in Vegas.
USN, okay.
Yeah. And I got Best Maker there, too. So that was good.
Yeah.
Who did you share a table with? Because I know they do like the 4 people to table, right?
The first year... Who the hell was at my table last year? Or the first year? Chavez. I think Turpin. I don't remember who the other person was.
Yeah, we can get into Dustin Turpin eventually, but there's someone who has not stuck around like you have.
Right.
I think he's still around, just keeping a low profile.
Understandably so.
Yeah, that skeleton bump.
Oh man. Anyway, so like you had your first 2 years in the business, right? You're literally on top of the world, right? And did you have any pressure? It's just like thinking about how the hell am I supposed to carry this stuff through after you know coming out with this design that wins Best Tactical Folder 2 years in a row? You know, I mean, did you ever have this fear of peaking too early?
Well, first off, it's you know. I never had a chance to do like a lot of these guys do. They start off in the beginning. They make very few knives. Because they make very few, the price goes way up. You know, then they can start getting more out on a down low without too many people seeing how many are going, and kind of build up their price and reputation, and and how hard they are to get at that point. I never had that luxury. I had to go from literally, I didn't have a job for 6 months before that to, I got to start having money come in and catch back up from opening the shop. We didn't get into that whole story, how I got to that point. It was a big fiasco just for me to actually do this the way it happened. And
I'll tell it.
Okay, so where do I even start with that? I don't want to go back to the beginning, so I'm trying to, where do you start? So I'm at this company. I'm working, making, designing prototype machinery and stuff. The company was changing a lot over the last couple of years I was there. I was starting to get unhappy there, but it was still really a great place to work. I was there for quite a while. Well, I end up getting laid off from that place. I come home the day I'm laid off, and saying to my wife, well, what the hell are we going to do now? I got to go find another job, blah, blah, blah. At least we had a little money that we were able to, to hold me out for a while. At the time, unemployment was like a year, even though I still wouldn't be able to survive on that. They would have taken my house by that point. But, I have this chunk of money now, and my wife said, well, why don't you were doing okay with the knives before this happened. Why don't you try get the machine and get it going here?
So we have Jen to thank for you actually going and purchasing.
Yeah, she's a fool.
Purchasing a CNC machine.
To have 3 kids, you
right.
know, and to say, yeah, go ahead, spend what we got from that company and on a machine, and by the time you're done with the machine and the software and the computer and all the tools, you're talking $50,000. So, but I'm expecting at this point, to get unemployment. But I'm not unemployed. I now have a business. So I got screwed. And now at this point, I find this out 3 months into it, and I'm like, oh crap! I already spent, I already bought all this stuff, so I had no choice but to make it work. So I just, did what I had to do. I came up with the design. I got the whole process down. I made my first couple. That was in January. When I got laid off, it was October. I got to January. I finally got my first. I think I made 2 of them. I got my first 2 knives done. And but at this point, no money was coming in, so I had to take a job. So I find a job. I take a job. It's like an hour away. I went 2 days. In those 2 days, I posted. I had like 34 followers on Instagram. I posted my picture. One person saw it. Another person saw it. All of a sudden, I started getting followers. And 2 days at being at that company, I told them, okay, I'm not working here anymore. I'm gone. Because I had enough orders to go, at least 6 months, and I wanted to try it, so I went at it.
That's just awesome.
Levon reposted one of your knives, and next thing you know, it was a full-time job.
Oh God! No, I don't even think I had a decent amount of followers back then.
No, not back then.
No, I remember seeing. I remember it, Jake. I remember I saw the knife when I think it was probably that same evening that you probably posted, Brian. And I said, I need this thing. And I think I sent it to you immediately, Jake. And it was that original Typhoon, and I placed my order that day. I think, Brian, you know it.
Yeah, you were pretty quick. You were in there pretty quick.
You were on a very steep incline at that time where you needed a lot of stuff, actually.
Yeah, neat. It was my responsibility to own something. It wasn't a want. Jesus. That's the way it is. Yeah. Don't you just love customers like me, Brian? It's the best.
Yeah. So were the Typhoons frame locks, or were they liner lock at that point?
The first 3 that I made it ended up being more than 3. But the first 3 that I made were a lock segment, so it was like a sub liner lock.
Oh wow! I thought it was just a liner, a normal liner.
No, it was just a little lock segment. So it was a long lock piece. That was inlaid into the frame on the inside.
Wow.
They were a little soft, but I could have stiffened them up. I did make a few of them. I could have made that design even better, but before I even got to that point, it was like everybody wanted frame frame locks. Everybody who contacted me, like, oh, I'll take one if I can get in a frame lock. I was like, all right, well, I'll make them all frame locks then. And that seemed to be what people wanted.
Probably ended
Yeah,
up
that was
being-
right about when that. Sorry.
Go for it, dude.
I was gonna say that was right about when the flipper frame lock, tactical knife custom market was going nuts. So
Yeah, it was.
It's nuts. Yeah, I mean, and it still kind of is. It's sort of become like the bread and butter of the folding knife world, and everything kind of builds from there. And all of your knives have been frame lock flippers up until this mini Typhoon.
It's the first one wasn't.
Right.
But it really is just a beautiful design. It's the simplicity of it. It works good. It works all the time. It's easy to manufacture. That's why it's done.
Preach. I'm a huge Chris Reeve apologist, so to hear someone like you saying that the frame lock is a good design, I'm pretty happy about that, because I think the frame lock gets a lot of shit these days, and people don't realize how fucking perfect it is, essentially.
I mean,
When
guys
does the
are
erotic
making
fan
them.
fiction come out?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Sorry, I said to Dave, when does the erotic fan fiction come out?
Oh, that'll be a segment later. I've got it.
Get the dang thing done. Get the dang thing done. Get the dang thing done. That's Chris Reeve's old face, apparently.
Sounded a little bit more. Sounded more Australian than South African.
Like
No.
no one can do a proper South African accent unless you're South African.
I'll give you a preview. It's me and Chris Reeve, and we're beating the shit out of Jay Davis at Blade Show 2012 when he put hands on him. That's how it starts.
Wait, that happened?
Yeah, I mean, Brian, I'm sorry, I don't want to detract from your thing, but
No,
it got
go.
me on a Chris Reeve rant, and this is great lore if you are not one of like the YouTube obsessives like I was. Back then, there was a few channels. Jay Davis, you guys know who Jay Davis is, right? Or
Yeah.
you remember him?
Yeah.
He was like one of the biggest YouTube knife channels when there was only like 4 people.
Right.
And he caused a bunch of shit. He's the one that single-handedly caused the whole ZT LMAX like hysteria. And he at one point was talking real spicy about the heat treat for the Sebenzas back when it was 58 to 59 HRC. And Chris Reeve was none too happy with him, and allegedly, because we don't want to catch a case, Chris Reeve and him got into a bit of a physical altercation at Blade.
Wow.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, I've never heard that story. That's amazing.
Yeah, Chris Reeve put hands on him.
Wow.
Has anyone ever tried to beat you up, Brian, because of the Rockwell hardness of your blade?
Many people try to beat me up, just not over that.
Oh,
None
wait,
of-
you guys got it backwards. Chris Reeve is the one that attacked John Davis.
Oh, well, then maybe it's a more likely scenario for you, Brian.
Not yet.
I give you full license to beat up 4 certain customers of yours.
Oh my
who don't
god, I
remember
would
this deal.
love that.
So, okay, can we actually talk about this for a second? What's the dumbest thing anyone's ever said to you as a knife maker?
I would like to tell you, but if I tell you, it's gonna totally call this guy out, and he's gonna know that I'm talking about because it's like, I was like kind of blown away by the question.
You're assuming that people are actually going to listen to this.
Good point. All right, so
We can edit it out, Brian. Don't worry.
so one of the questions from a guy was, okay, I picked this color bronze, but I'm colorblind. Can you tell me what it looks like? What it's going to look like?
Oh, God. Should have told him it was going to look blue.
I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I mean, look, what did it look like on the page that you looked at it there? I didn't know how to answer that. It was awkward.
How many people have asked for red?
For
like red anodizing? Because I feel like people just don't get that.
Yeah, quite a few, but it's. I think it's been getting better. I think the word. I think the word is out.
All right, thank God. Yeah, word's out, guys. You can't anodize shit red. You should learn that about 10 years ago.
Wait, you can't?
Okay.
Yeah. So this guy asked you to describe a color that he probably couldn't even imagine.
Right. I mean, how do you do that? How do you explain? Tell me what orange looks like. You can't.
That's amazing.
All right, I was going to say, how often do you get people that just request like totally absurd materials that they see on YouTube and like, yeah, I want this, and no way they can afford like the down payment on just the raw materials themselves.
Yeah, a lot of guys ask, but luckily I don't do much of that stuff. The stuff that I pretty much unless you're a good customer of mine, I don't even, entertain the idea. I just don't make money doing that stuff. It's ridiculous. For an example, I made a full-time Damascus frame knife. I do both sides. I don't do that one side shit. That's ridiculous to me. And I barely sell the knife to cover the cost of the material.
Right.
It's my knives just don't go for that kind of price, and part of that is because I went from literally zero to making 25 knives a month for a couple years.
Yeah, I actually had a question about that. Do you think so? That is a pretty good explanation. Do you think some of it has to do with the fact that people are still kind of prejudicial against CNC and custom knives? They don't understand that it's a skill as much as any other part of knife making is.
That's the thing. You think people just most guys. There are guys that do it. I know a young maker now who's didn't have a clue about this stuff, and he dived right into it, and he's doing well. It's not brain surgery, but at the same time, it's skills that you have to develop over a long period of time. It's not like I just my first day out and I can just go make a knife like this. It doesn't work. To make one, to make two, to make 10 maybe, but make hundreds at a time work well and have right tolerances. It's not easy to do.
And the big thing is that you took skill sets that you had through other professions that you've had and applied them to knife making. I think that's what made your knives unique and as good as they are. It's just you took a lot of knowledge over the course of a bunch of stuff and applied that to your knife.
Yeah, but the funny thing is from the CNC end,
mm-hmm.
what was required for my job. If I just learned what was required for the job I was doing at the time, I wouldn't know shit. It's 90% of it was me making my own shit on the side. That's where I learned all that stuff. So it's I spent lots and lots and lots of time doing it. Years of shit. Literally, that my machine at my work was running all the time, and most of the time it was for me.
Wow, that's really awesome. Wow.
But I do think I do think people are starting to change. They're starting to see that it's not really how it's made as much as the pride that's taken in the knife in the last few steps. That's really what does it. That's what separates a crappy knife from a good knife. If you just shit out on the end and don't do decent finishes, don't change that screw that you stripped out, or it's you got to do it. It's just people are spending ridiculous amounts of money. Even a $500 knife, it's a knife. You don't need a $500 knife in reality. So for a knife, it better be sharp and it better work right. That's.
Speak for yourself. You don't need a $500 knife.
You don't need one. If you're going to really use them, you probably wouldn't be buying that.
Well, the unofficial motto of collectible knives and knife collectors is functional art, and that I think you just described that in a nutshell inadvertently just by describing your the way that you attacked making knives. It's kind of a natural progression into functional art because they do function very well, but they have to be pretty as well.
I was actually talking, Jake, onto that point. I was actually talking to a buddy of ours the other week, and he's relatively new to the knife making world, and he's all hung up on the whole handmade thing. But he actually was looking at Brian's knives, and he's obsessed with them. And I was like, when you think about it this way, it's like furniture making. Take two for people who make furniture, right? One guy who's like this old-fashioned guy, uses all hand tools, and he makes this very sturdy, very traditional-looking bookshelf. Meanwhile, there's this other artist who is putting together this bookshelf using all of these crazy power tools. Maybe he employs some computer stuff, but you end up with this incredibly ornate and beautiful bookshelf that still works very, very well as a bookshelf. Do you take anything away from either one of these people? And that seemed to click when it came to the world of custom knives.
Right. I hear you.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that we are so obsessed with modernity otherwise. We all want the newest phones and computers and shit, and then people have this really bizarrely antiquarian view of of knife making in general. It's like you go to the doctor, and if you have a cut on your leg, you don't ask them to cut your leg off because you appreciate the handwork involved in amputating your fucking leg like they did in the 19th century.
Right.
So, like, why do we need to force knife makers to make their knives probably worse than they could be? Because a human is not as precise as a machine, and there are certain things that CNCs really are, I think, better for. So,
Yeah, as far as precision, there's no question. I think the answer is just that a good collection has a little bit of everything. I like some of the imperfections that exist in handmade stuff because it sort of tells the story of the maker, and I'm probably not going to trust those as far as lock failure or, for the blade to be hardened as accurately every time and things like that. It's just two different, for me at least, it's just two different purposes for an item that, from 20 feet away, it looks similar, but, one's for precision and the other is more for looking at in a display case or something like that.
Not like you've never had a production knife fail on you, Jake.
Of course, yeah. And that's a popular topic in this household, too, is the knives that are for using are not necessarily the same knives that are for collecting. And I've had firsthand experience of almost losing a tendon and a very important finger from a failed frame lock. So, and from a very reputable production company too.
Now let me ask you that: were you doing something you weren't supposed to be doing with it?
I was not batoning or spine whacking or any of the I don't know what the typical what you're not supposed to be doing. Just I was holding it a way that I probably should not have been holding it, but not doing anything that should have allowed the frame to slip. It was actually
you weren't like stabbing a
defect.
55-gallon drum with it or anything.
No, I was literally just holding it and kind
He
of
only does that
wiggling
with
it,
your knives,
giving
Brian.
it the blade wobble, blade play test, and it just snapped. It was
damn.
yeah, unfortunate manufacturing error. I think it was, I think I blocked that whole week out of my memory pretty well. But if I remember, the lock was just cut. The whole thing was on an angle, and it never kind of returned to a 90 like it should at the end.
As a maker, that scares the shit out of me.
I know we talked about that before about your lock bar pressure and your dedication to making sure it doesn't fail.
Now my lock bar pressures aren't nearly what they were, but in the beginning I was just like, you know what, hands to begin with, so it didn't really seem bad to me. But I just was so afraid of somebody doing something stupid with it, and then me being held liable for it. So I made the locks really strong then. But it scares me. It still scares me. It's what are you gonna do though? You hope that they're using it the way they're supposed to be, and that's all you can do.
Well, you obsess over making sure that before it leaves your shop, it's right, and I've seen you do that. And from there, it's all up to the end user.
Every knife is I spine test every knife, and I've never had a problem here. So what scares me is maybe wear out in the field, or things start to wear in, and then it's just a little loose, and you really would just need to go a little bit of but they don't do it because it's so fast now, and now now it's not sitting centered, and then things can get out of whack, so you don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting to see what they look like after they're 10 or 20 years old. That's not something that we can look at currently.
Right. Yeah. Yep. It's every time I see somebody who has one of my knives, I always ask to check it out. I want to see how things are holding up. And I think these new ones will be even better, hold up even better. Now I'm not putting the titanium right, the balls right on the titanium as a race. I actually have a hard backspacer now. So
does that really make that big of a difference? Because people obsess over that sometimes, and I've always been curious from someone that's more experienced.
It definitely wears in. There's no doubt that it wears in. Once it wears in, the initial wear in, does it keep going? I guess it depends on how rough you are with the knife. If you were really rough with the knife and putting a lot of side pressure on that while you're cutting or something, maybe. But these the distance that it travels and the speed that it goes, this is like nothing. Some of those bearings are made to go 10,000 RPMs, and it's doing nothing. So,
I've found the same thing, because that's I tend to be really interested in the nitty gritty engineering side of knives more than anything else, and even working on a prototype of my own, trying to see are that exact question, are these ball bearings going to make a race and then stop, or are they going to make a race and then just keep going, and the tolerance keeps changing and you keep tightening the pivot over time? And it seems that people are a little more worried about it than they should be, because in reality it'll move a half a millimeter over its lifetime, and once that race is pushed out, it really struggles to go any further. But obviously, a hardened steel backer is not a bad idea. So, but like you said, it all depends on the use. I mean, if you're using it as a pry bar every day,
right.
that's a different story.
Now, the thing with using the hardened washers is now you don't have the balls in the races keeping your blade centered. Not when I say centered, not centered, tip centered, but
we're still talking about knives, right?
Centered on the axis of the pivot.
Mm-hmm.
So really, you can your tolerance for your pivot doesn't have to be nearly as tight when you're putting the race into the frame, or you won't notice it. Let me put it that way. You won't notice it is if the races are going into the blade in the frame. But if you put the hardened washers, because you're not getting any of that centering of the bearing,
mm-hmm.
You have to make sure your pivot tolerance is tight.
Speak for yourself, guys. I wrist flick my knives out so fast that they get to 10,000 RPM. Just kidding, Chris Reeve. I would never do that. I would never do that, Chris.
It's all going to come back to Chris Reeve. Oh my god.
Yo, because he'll come down on you. He's like the ghost of Christmas past. He finds out if you've wrist flicked your knives, and he visits you in the middle of the night.
Sounds like another one of your wet dreams.
I was going to say, for me, it ends differently than for other people.
That feels like such a strange policy when I hear of makers or production companies that investigate if a knife has been quote unquote abused, when the definition of abuse can just be if you took it apart at some point, then clearly there's no way that it'll ever go back properly again, or something to that effect.
Yeah, Medford has a whole fucking forensics lab to make sure you haven't ever touched your knife.
Yeah,
he's got fucking Gil Grissom from CSI, now that he's out of work, figuring out if you fucked with your knife.
Well, this is my opinion on it, and it's funny because it happens all the time. First off, I don't know why you guys take the knives apart to begin with. There's no reason for it. You blow them out with some air, blow them out with some contact cleaner, whatever, put the drops of oil in there, you're good to go. You don't have to fuck with anything. You don't have to fuck up the Torx heads or any of that crap. It'll look like just the way you had it. There's no reason, really.
Are you picking on me? Is that what this is all about?
I have people that I send them the knives the day they get it. They call me up. Yeah, I fucked up all the screws. Can you send me a new set of screws? It's like, you just got it. What are you taking apart?
In our defense, your knives don't need to be taken apart, but without naming any names, there are some very big, very popular tactical knives out there that absolutely do need to be taken. Like getting a new pistol, you gotta get the factory grease and stuff out of it before you shoot it. There are knives that definitely need to be tweaked and tuned before they can go into service in the pocket.
Emerson.
Yeah.
Among others.
Yes, among others. Jake lovingly calls that counting their rings.
Yes, you have to cut it open and count its rings.
Yes. Oh man. Anyway, so like going back to this, it's like, and the strange policies that manufacturers have, and then you go watch like any of the, one of my big rituals after any big show, like SHOT Show or Blade Show, is to go on YouTube and look at what all the manufacturers are bringing out for that year, and they always have like some representative going through each one of the knives, and this representative always looks like they've never touched a freaking knife in their life. and like it opens with a flipper, and they're like flinging it across the room with their wrist. It's like, could you do some research before you employed these people to show off your knives? It's just a very strange thing, you know. Like the only company I think that has like a competent person talking about their knives is ZT.
Quartermaster.
Oh, wait, do they even have?
Yo,
does he even show
yeah,
up?
they have Jared West in the. They have Jared West in the lobby.
In the lobby,
strung
Overdosing
out
on
after.
heroin.
Yes, after he caught the hot bag.
Yeah. Oh man, needle hanging out of his arm.
Yeah, he's nodding off in the middle of the fucking SHOT Show interview.
Wow.
I
guess we're not.
Is this allegedly,
not
or
really,
is this really happened?
Oh, this is all.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
It's probably gonna happen. Yo, speaking of it, more great knife community lore. Please tell me you guys have seen the video of him on the news where he is holding the fucking Chihuahua being interviewed about like a plane catching on fire in California
Please
that he
tell
was
me.
on.
No.
No, this shit is real. Google Jared West. He was on a plane that like caught on fire on the runway, and they interviewed him afterwards, and he is holding a Chihuahua in one arm, looking strung out as hell. And I can't make this shit up. This is real.
Was the Chihuahua real or just like a stuffed animal that contains all of his heroin?
No, it was 100% made in Texas.
A mule dog.
Yes.
A Chihuahua packed with heroin.
Yes.
It's sad because
Oh, God. No one's gonna listen to this anymore. We've lost so many of our all the drug addicts that'll listen to this.
No, the real esoteric references. Yeah, we'll lose Warren Thomas too. Zing. Yeah, no, that was Knife Haters was alleging that he was a meth addict at one point.
You know, hey, to each his own.
Yeah,
To get back on topic, though, I did have a question for you, Brian. Steel lock bar inserts. So a lot of custom makers will tell you don't need one. You seem to have always opted for them on your frame locks. Can you explain a little bit about why you think that's necessary and why you do it?
Titanium is soft. Over time, it's gonna change. Now, is it necessary? Do you have to do it? No, it's proven that you don't have to do it. But why would you not want the hardest thing you can have there? To me, it's an obvious, an obvious thing. Now you never have to worry about it. But more importantly than that, the reason why I did it was a couple things. One is because of the detent. That the way I did it, I wanted it to be strong, so I had to make it in an insert. Then, there's so many things I want to say about it. How do you say them all? It's my mind is going a million miles an hour because I can think about it fast and I can talk about it.
It's the drugs.
Part of that, yes.
Well, it's your floor, so feel free to explain whatever you want.
Yeah, man.
Fuck.
Did you just fall?
No, I'm just trying to get my head together. I'm whacked out now.
It was all that talk about Jared West and the dog. The mule dog ruined everything.
Oh,
my bad.
Okay, so the important thing that I wanted to be able to do with it is if it does wear or something does go wrong with it, it's changeable. I thought when I first started making and screwing around with pushing the ball in for the detent, and I was making frame locks and just testing stuff, getting that lock angle right and cutting it into that titanium frame I just made was always dicey for me. Get that part out of the situation. Now it was a little lock insert. If I cut it too small, I put in a new one. It's no big deal. Somebody called me up and says, you know what, my lock's getting a little deep now. Okay, you can take it off and measure it, and I can send you one, or I can, you can send it to me and I can change it. It's just a simple thing now. Why throw away a whole frame or have to dick around with a whole frame, when it's just gonna be a little hardened piece.
Plus, as we mentioned before, that lock insert has your little detent shoe machined into it as well.
Right. I couldn't do that in titanium, obviously.
Yeah.
Right.
Has anyone tried to license your detent nub shoe thing?
I haven't looked to see if anybody else tried to put anything in. I've thought about it before. I thought about it in the beginning. It's, it's not. It's a knife. It's not rocket science. It is what it is. By getting any type of IP on it, what's it going to do for me? It really is not going to do nothing for me.
Well, but people have approached you to use your design, though.
Yeah, a couple guys have asked if they can do something. I haven't seen anybody use it yet because one, it's not cost effective to do, and only guys with CNC machinery are going to do it. So it's kind of
Right.
it's the knife world seems for the most part it's the higher end guys, the guys they're not taking other people's stuff. You don't want to be known as that guy.
Right.
You know, it's the new up and comer guys that like that feature and incorporate it into theirs, and that's it's a knife. It's there's only so much you can do with it. So whether you came up with it yourself or you saw it somewhere and it triggered something off while you're designing it, it is what it is. It's a knife.
Well said.
That's true. Well, we're going on about an hour and a half here. Brian, I did want to ask you a little bit about the mini Typhoon builds and how they're coming along. Can people still get one if they want one, or have you closed the books entirely?
I closed the books, and when I closed the books, I knew I have to already start ordering materials and all that stuff and get that going because some of it's takes some lead time. I get materials shipped to somebody, and then I do have my frames water jet out. So it's just a profile is water jet. I have no holes, no lock bars, none of that stuff. And that's just so I can handle it easier here. My little shop, I can't, could I cut the frames out totally from here? Of course. But with the little shop, there's certain things that you have to do to try to alleviate some of that big stuff, dealing with big sheets and stuff. So, that takes time and, having stuff, then I got to make the blade and send it to get heat treated. So basically I opened them for a week. I closed them, and then I added onto that list some extras because I know I keep getting people that, I forgot and I couldn't make up my mind. Are you still open? It's 3 weeks ago. You still can't make up your mind now.
So that's it for the mini Typhoon. You did two batches, and both of them filled up really quick. You think this is the first knife that you've built in a while that's really echoed the success of the mini Typhoon? I know the Cyclone and the Hurricane. Yeah, I know that the Cyclone and the Hurricane also did well, but it seemed like there was a lot of fanfare for this particular model as well.
And it's funny coming back to it, and it seems to be popular again. I'm sure, still with the amount of people that I turn away, that I can get another run or two in if I wanted. I don't know that I want to be making these for the next 2 years.
Right.
I do have other designs I want to get to. Unfortunately, this is a popular one. The advantage of CNC is I can always come back at a later time and do it.
That's true.
And that's what I like about it. But it seems like everybody's attention spans are so short as it is. I think it's better, I can come out with a new design every 6 months, 8 months, or, once a year, come out with a new design and, get enough orders that it's worth doing.
Well, that's awesome. And, we all wish you the best with everything that you've been doing and any future builds that you're doing. We're always excited to see what you're coming out with. And we can't wait. I can't wait. After seeing what you're doing for Blade Show, I know the world is going to be, when I say the world, I mean the small,
you three guys will be
of the knife community impressed with what you're doing. So that's pretty exciting.
It's so hard for me to keep a wrap on it. You know what I mean? Part of, part like Instagram, even for me, it's as much as it's for other people to see my shit. It's for me to keep going because being in the garage all day, every day, just making this stuff, you start to go crazy. So, to do this and not be able to show it is killing me.
Wow. So when do you think we'll get a taste of what you're making?
I have another piece of steel coming that should be here tomorrow. I want to make a second blade. Not sure which one I'm going to go with for this fancy one, and I'm going to get them heat treated, and I'm going to do the frame. I don't know. It's I'm debating on
you'll let us know.
What part do I show? When do I start
Right.
showing it? If I start showing it too early, it seems like people are already done with it. So I kind of want to hold out to the last minute if I can.
I think that's probably a good idea. But the three of us were wondering, Brian, we really appreciate you being the first guest on this podcast that no one's going to listen to. And, with us pretty well. You know, you get our humor. You don't have much of a filter, which kind of works with us. And
It doesn't work for me. Doesn't work for my wife.
Well, we'll see. I mean, she's welcome to come on anytime as well. But what we were going to actually ask you is, would you like to be a permanent host of the Knife Nuts podcast?
Really? Wait. I just got a tear that I got it. I'm a little choked up.
Yo, the acting is so good, guys.
I know.
On point.
Like we didn't
Win an
ask you
Emmy for a
before.
podcast?
You're kidding, right? Maybe I'm
No,
missing my calling. Maybe I should stop knife making and go into acting.
I think you have. So we'll take that as a resounding yes.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd like to do this again. Like at least so I can get a little more comfortable.
Good. So you've heard that here first, guys. Brian is actually going to be a permanent member of the Knife Nuts podcast. He's not just going to be a guest on this show. So think of it as Top Gear's tame racing driver, only our tame knife maker never shuts up. So it's perfect.
That's good because I have a lot of questions still to ask.
Good.
But we'll have time.
Absolutely. And it's good to have the perspective of a knife maker when discussing certain things. So I think that'll, be an interesting addition to this adventure that we're going on. But in closing, I just want to talk a little bit about where you can get in contact with us and maybe give everybody a little bit, some other resources, some other really cool podcasts that are out there for people to listen to and go on from there. So I'll start. I'll say anybody can reach me on Instagram at Metalevon. So that's METALEVON. I'm pretty much on everything, but I'm really most active on Instagram. And that's where you can find me. I'm sure we'll have some YouTube stuff coming up in the future as well under Knife Nuts. So, Dave, why don't you go next?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram as _misanthropia because I apparently was not the only angsty teenager who liked that moniker. I am Misanthropia on the USN and Blade forums. I'm always on Blade forums, so you can get me there. And you can also email me through the Blade forums email tool or at knifenutspodcast@gmail.com.
He actually still is an angsty teenager. But in all seriousness, Dave actually has a really cool YouTube channel and does some really cool reviews on some interesting production knives.
Wow, I can't believe I forgot to plug that.
Yeah. I'm glad
I have a YouTube channel.
That's pretty good. Jake, you're up.
Sure. So I'm also on Instagram more than anything else. Often, in the same location as Levon. So I'm Whiskey Pickle Jake, and we used to use the Whiskey Pickle Knife hashtag for all of our knife collecting adventures. So anywhere in there, and on Blade forums as well, Jake_Lucas. And anywhere you find Levon, we're usually not far apart.
We're best friends. But a couple of really cool things to check out. The Knife Nuts YouTube channel will be up shortly. Hopefully, we'll be able to upload this and a couple other things on there as time goes on. But as far as other podcasts go, the Modern Neanderthal podcast is a great one to check out. That was one that influenced a bunch of us. Dave, do you know a couple more?
Yeah, there's Gear Geeks Live, which is Tony from Everyday Commentaries podcast. Very opinionated. I respect him because he speaks his mind. I don't agree with him on a lot of stuff, but it's a good one to check out.
Mm-hmm. Epic Snuggle Bunny on YouTube is another one I watch frequently.
What a very American opinion to have. I love it.
Well, can I just say right now, if anyone says that a knife that is over 3.5 or that has a blade of 3.5 inches or over is huge, I will lose it.
Jake's gonna swaddle. He's going to swaddle a bald eagle with the American flag and curl up with it and go to sleep tonight now.
I do actually sleep with an American flag. That's no joke.
Yeah, do you sleep with one of Brian's American flag knives?
No, of all the people, I should definitely have one of those, and sadly I don't. But
$1,200 on True North Knives right now. Brian, send him a link.
Yeah, I did see that. That looks very good.
Brian, where can people find you?
Being a hermit inside my garage, that's where I am 99% of the time. So if you're driving around, you can always stop by.
Look
but
for the
in reality, Sharp by Design on Instagram is typically the easiest. I'm always checking it out. I get back and forth the DMs. I'm pretty active on it, so that's probably the first priority. Then or email, and that's b.a.nadeau and that's the easiest. Any other way, don't call me. I'll call you.
And on that note, I want to thank everyone for listening to this, even though probably no one will. Hopefully, we'll be back for a second episode. We're hopefully doing this at most once a week. So we hope to see everybody soon. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
See you, everybody.
Take care.
Laters.